Will the introduction of universal credit in Kings Lynn fuel more demand of our food bank?
There has been evidence that where universal credit is rolled out, the effect is for food bank use to go up. Matthew Parris, what do you think of
the theory? The theory of universal credit is a very persuasive one. It is that you earn your way out of poverty and that nobody is better off out of work than in work. That's the theory. The practice is, I think it's the Treasury's fault. It has been starved of the resources it would have needed. It needed to be generous, at least in the introduction. The wait, was it 5 or 6 weeks before you get paid, seemed to me exceedingly hard-hearted. And I think if you're going to bring in a revolutionary new idea like universal credit, you really have to provide the funds, the sweeteners to make it work. And I don't think the Treasury has ever liked universal credit, and they're trying to kill it, and they may well succeed.
Lisa Nandy, what do you think should have happened to Esther McVey, who was criticised in the House of Commons this week for distorting the effect of universal credit being rolled out?
Well, we've had...
She apologised for it. Do you think she should have gone?
Of course, I think she should have gone. I mean, we've had universal credit actually in Wigan for 5 years because we were one of the pathfinder areas that trialled it before. So for 5 years, we've been telling her department that there are problems, and then you have this National Audit Office report, which is signed off by her department, which says that 40% of people on universal credit are in financial difficulties, and the government should pause this and not put more people onto it until they know that it can work. And yet, what does she do? She comes to Parliament and she tells us that everything is great, that it just needs to be rolled out more quickly. Either she has no idea of the impact that her flagship policy is having on people across this country, or she deliberately misrepresented this to Parliament. And I'll say this to you, that I've had constituents in the last 5 years who've made tiny mistakes on their forms, or who've asked to miss an appointment so that they could go to a family funeral, or who've been 3 minutes late for an appointment, and they have been sanctioned and they have lost everything. Esther McVey came to Parliament twice and misrepresented what was in that report. She's come and apologised, but she's still got her job, she's still got a ministerial salary, she's still got a ministerial car, she hasn't resigned, and Theresa May must sack her.
Priti Patel?
Well, I actually think when it comes to universal credit, it is now a policy that's been established in government, and it's one that needs to be supported. And with that, I think we have to look at the practical ways in which the government is rolling out universal credit.
So just before you go on to that, what do you make of what Lisa's just said about sacking Esther McVey?
Esther apologised to Parliament yesterday and she gave a statement in Parliament. So I don't think she should be sacked.
But there's no benefit of a doubt for people who are on universal credit. If her department won't show compassion for people on universal credit, why should she get that level of compassion?
You've made your point. I'm letting her reply.
So sacking a minister and replacing a minister will not solve the problems immediately. And I think actually the focus now has to be on making sure that universal credit works for the people that are on universal credit, that they don't get the glitches in payment, that they are supported. And I think, actually, where we should look at this from the human element is that one-on-one support that should come from the job centres while people are transferring onto universal credit and giving them all the help that they need. You know, it's pretty obvious through the NAO report and through some of the past cases that have been come up as well, that it's not a perfect system. Matthew actually touched on the fact of the taper, the money that came from the Treasury. There were problems, there's no doubt about that. I remember at the time I was involved in DWP, I was a minister. Yeah. In fact, my former Secretary of State resigned because of the rows with the Treasury, that we were not being funded enough. And that is part of the problem. So ensuring that the money is going into the system to support people is the priority. And I don't think changing the ministers at all will alter that.
Mary Sacre, you asked this question. Is food bank use rising in Kings Lynn?
I think it is. My background is family law, and for me it was incredible to see how working mums, young mums, single mums, sort of flourished under working tax credits when they were introduced. And I would be so angry if those women, and most men were relevant, suffered under universal credit. If it's going to work, make it work.
Carolyn Radford.
Well, I'm obviously around Mansfield, which is an area of deprivation within the UK, and I would just hope that universal credit, although it's supposed to simplify a very complicated system, I'm worried about the alarm and distress that it's going to cause the people in my community.
Is food bank use high in Mansfield?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And the universal credit, what state is it in? Is it being rolled out there?
I believe so, yeah.
Ian?
You know, Pretty, I have to say to you with respect, you say that universal credit needs to be supported. It's not universal credit that needs to be supported, it's those that are in receipt of universal credit need to be supported. And the reality is, because the Trussell Trust have told us that in areas where universal credit has been rolled out over a 12-month period, that food bank use has increased by 52%. That's what's happened as a result of universal credit. And I can tell you in my constituency, it's been rolled out. I have people coming to my surgeries every week, and it's disastrous to sit and listen to the stories. And often you're talking about very vulnerable people. You're talking about people with mental health issues. You're talking about people with anxiety. And they've been put into a situation that they're facing eviction because of the situation that this Tory government has put them in. It's cruel, it's inhumane, the Minister has misled Parliament, she should go, the policy should go.
Who would like to make a point on that? Up there, the person... Yes, the woman in the second row from the back. We're coming to the end, so be brief if you would.
Yeah, I think that the point of a trial and a rollout is to look at what works and what doesn't work. And it seems to me that we are just ignoring what doesn't work and we're just trying to push for it to work. We need to, for it to work, we've got to look at both sides and act on them.
And you, sir, in the second row there.
If I'm going into work and I lie to my business, I'm going to get sacked. The only way that you MPs get sacked is if you go on holiday to Israel.
Well, on that sharp point, I think we've nearly... I'll just take one more point from the woman in pink. Very brief, if you would.
I think it's absolutely disgusting in this day and age that there are food banks at all. We should be looking after each other as decent human beings should. If it takes less money for certain people to make it better for other people, that's what should be happening. We should be looking after each other.
Thank you very much.